Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into a question that I think pretty much everyone has thought about at some point or another. What really makes for a happy life?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And you've given us some really interesting material to dig into for this deep dive.
Yeah.
So we have excerpts from a video where just like normal everyday people are kind of riffing on their thoughts about happiness.
Right.
And then we've also got findings from this massive 85-year Harvard study.
Wow.
So buckle up, because I think we are about to bust some myths and uncover some surprising truths about what it really takes to live a happy life.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how these deceptively simple questions about happiness can reveal so much about what we as humans really value.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just jump right in. The video starts off with these everyday people sharing their thoughts. And you know what?
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
A lot of them are mentioning money.
Yeah.
Seems like winning $1 million is kind of like the ultimate dream for some folks.
Yep.
And the video even mentioned this 2018 survey where 83% of college freshmen actually said they wanted to be rich.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of wild.
Huh.
It really highlights how much we connect financial success with happiness, you know?
Right. It's a very common assumption and worth examining.
For sure.
You know, this whole idea of miswanting comes into play here.
Ooh, tell me more.
It's a bit of a fancy term from behavioral science, but essentially what it means is we often end up chasing after things that we think are going to make us happy,
Okay.
but they often don't really live up to the hype.
I gotcha. It's like thinking that winning the lottery is going to solve all your problems and like make you eternally happy.
Right.
But I've heard those stories about lottery winners ending up totally miserable.
Yeah, exactly. The video even mentions that.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it talks about how there's usually this like temporary happiness boost after some big win like that, but then people just kind of go back to their usual level of happiness over time. It's like a perfect example of how our predictions about what will make us happy aren't always accurate.
So true. Okay, so it's a good reminder to question our assumptions, I guess.
Right.
Which brings us to this mind-blowing 85-year Harvard study. Can you even imagine?
85 years.
Researchers following these people since 1938.
Wow.
They had two groups. So there were Harvard students
Okay.
and then a group of disadvantaged boys from Boston.
Interesting.
Talk about some really fascinating life stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, what a data set.
Right.
What makes this study so valuable is like the sheer amount of information that they've gathered over decades.
Right.
These guys coming from such different backgrounds and ending up on these totally different paths. We're talking like bricklayers and doctors. Even a president was in there.
Oh, way.
And it didn't even stop with them. So they eventually brought in their spouses, their kids, and started using these even more sophisticated methods to collect data. Like they were doing DNA analysis and they were monitoring stress responses.
Wow. Talk about dedication.
Yeah, that's some serious commitment right there. So
That's incredible. It really shows the power of longitudinal research, you know?
yeah.
When you follow people over such a long period of time,
Yeah.
you can really start to see the complex factors that lead to a long and fulfilling life.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it can really help us understand, you know, what contributes to happiness.
Exactly. So after all this time, what did they actually learn? The video highlights a couple of surprising findings. The first one is that physical health matters a lot.
Right.
But, I mean, it's not like a shocking revelation.
It's true.
It's worth repeating. Yeah.
It really is. It's not just about like living a long life,
Yeah.
but living well. You know, we're talking about health span, basically how many years you live in good health.
Right.
The study shows that being physically healthy has a big impact on our overall life satisfaction.
Yeah, and we're not talking about anything crazy, right?
Right.
It's just basic stuff like exercise and diet and not smoking and all that.
Exactly. The video even mentions a study that found just 15 minutes of exercise a day can significantly increase longevity and lower your risk of dying.
Wow.
And it doesn't stop there. So regular physical activity has also been linked to a lower risk of cognitive decline and dementia.
Right.
So
All that.
those daily walks or those quick workouts are not just good for your body, they're good for your mind.
That's fantastic. Okay, so physical health is like the foundation for
Yeah.
a happy life. I got it.
Yeah.
But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
This is the Harvard study's bombshell. The power of relationships.
Really?
We're not just talking about like feeling good, you know.
Hmm.
We're talking profoundly linked to both our health and how long we live.
Oh.
It's wild.
It is. This is where the study really challenges our assumptions.
Yeah.
For a long time, health research was all about those individual things like genetics and lifestyle choices. But the Harvard study, along with a ton of other research, has shown just how crucial social connections are for our overall well-being.
I mean, and the data is pretty convincing.
Yeah.
The video mentions that people with strong social ties are actually 50% more likely to survive each year.
Wow.
And married people tend to live longer too.
But it's not just about being married, right?
You're totally right. Quality matters.
Okay.
A bad marriage can actually be harmful to your health.
That makes sense.
We're talking about quality relationships here,
Yeah.
The ones that provide a sense of belonging, support, and love. Those are the ones that make the biggest difference.
Got it. So now, for the flip side of this, loneliness.
Right.
The video gets pretty real about how loneliness is on the rise, especially for young people.
Yeah.
And it's not just like a feeling.
Right.
This has some serious health consequences. We're not kidding around here.
It's a big issue. We've gone from a world where connection was just built into our daily lives.
To a world where it's become more of a choice.
Right.
And we're seeing the effects of that in the rise of loneliness, which is now considered a major public health concern.
It's true. And it's heavy stuff. The video actually compares loneliness to smoking like half a pack of cigarettes a day.
Wow.
That is a scary thought.
It's a powerful analogy, though, right?
Yeah.
It really illustrates how damaging chronic loneliness can be. And, it's important to clarify that loneliness isn't the same as being alone. Like, introverts can still have really fulfilling social lives. It just might look different. The key is having those deep, meaningful relationships that offer support and a sense of connection.
So true. So let's kind of circle back to this money question for a sec.
Okay.
The Harvard study suggests that just racking up achievements like making a ton of money doesn't automatically equal happiness. But finding meaningful work does seem to make a difference in, feeling fulfilled.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting. You know how the video highlights this tension between chasing external markers of success versus, finding internal fulfillment.
Yeah.
And when it comes to money, the research is a bit of a mixed bag.
Oh.
Some studies suggest that there's a happiness plateau
Yeah.
once you hit a certain income level, like around $75,000 a year. But then others argue that higher incomes do correlate with greater well-being.
So there's a magic number, like if I earn this much, I'll be happy.
Well, a recent study actually brought together researchers from those seemingly conflicting studies.
Oh, wow.
And they came up with a more nuanced perspective. It turns out the relationship between money and happiness depends on your baseline level of happiness.
Oh, interesting.
So below a certain income threshold, like around $100,000 a year,
Okay.
having more money does seem to increase happiness across the board.
Okay.
But above that threshold,
Yeah.
the impact varies from person to person.
So basically, if you're already generally happy, making more money might boost your happiness even more.
Exactly.
But if you're struggling to find joy, like a bigger paycheck alone might not be the answer.
Exactly. It's a complex interplay between those external factors like income and our own internal emotional landscape.
This is really making me rethink some of my own assumptions about happiness.
Yeah.
The thing that just keeps sticking with me is how important it is to nurture those close relationships. And something that struck me from the video was that it's not just a one-time thing.
No.
It's an ongoing process.
It's like physical fitness.
Oh, yeah.
You don't just go to the gym once and expect to be in shape forever, right?
Right.
It takes consistent effort and attention.
I love that analogy. And there were some really inspiring stories in the video about people who found happiness and connection later in life.
Oh, yeah.
There was one about this retired guy who found a sense of community at a gym. It's never too late to build meaningful connection.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. And it speaks to that amazing ability of our brains to grow and adapt throughout our lives.
Totally. It's never too late.
Never too late. The thing that really hit home for me was that people in their 80s often regret not spending more time with their loved ones.
That's powerful.
It's a powerful reminder to make those connections a priority now.
And it's not always about those grand gestures,
Yeah.
Sometimes those small, everyday interactions have the biggest impact. A phone call with a friend, a walk with a family member, sharing a meal.
Right.
These moments can really add up to a more fulfilling life in the long run.
Absolutely. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
So let's try to summarize some of the key takeaways for our listener today.
Okay.
First off, we've officially busted the myth that money alone equals happiness.
Yeah, money can't buy happiness.
While financial security is definitely important, it's
Yeah.
not the be-all, end-all. We've also highlighted that vital importance of both physical and social well-being. Taking care of our bodies through exercise, healthy eating, avoiding harmful habits is essential.
Absolutely.
But we need to give equal attention to nurturing those close relationships.
Right.
They're not just good for our mood.
Yeah.
They actually help us live longer, healthier, and happier lives.
I love that.
It's a powerful message.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder why we don't prioritize these things more often.
I think part of it is that we often take relationships for granted. Like
Yeah.
the video points out. They're
Yeah.
just such an integral part of our lives.
Yeah.
We don't always see them as something we need to actively cultivate and maintain.
It's like we get so caught up in chasing those external signs of success that we forget to nurture the things that really matter.
It's so true.
And that's where this deep dive and the insights from that incredible Harvard study can be so valuable.
Totally.
It's a reminder to shift our perspective and recognize the power of those simple, everyday connections.
I couldn't agree more.
So as we wrap things up, let's leave our listener with something to think about. The Harvard study found that one of the biggest regrets people have later in life is not spending enough time with loved ones. So what's one small step you can take today to strengthen a relationship or make a new connection could be the key to a happier, healthier life.
Yeah.
It really doesn't,
No, not at all.
small gestures can make a really big difference.
Definitely.
Like maybe it's calling that friend you haven't talked to in a while.
Right.
Or planning like a coffee date with a family member.
Mm-hmm.
Or even just making an effort to be more present in your relationships.
Yeah.
Just
Just being more mindful.
it all adds up.
It really does. And here's what I find so fascinating. When we invest in our relationships, we're not just benefiting ourselves.
Well, that's interesting.
We're creating this ripple effect of positivity
Hmm.
that extends to our families, our communities, and beyond.
It's like they say, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Exactly.
So by nurturing those connections,
Yeah.
we're building a more supportive and fulfilling world for everyone.
And it can start with something so simple, like a smile,
Yeah,
a kind word, or a genuine interest in another person's life.
that's true.
These small acts of kindness and connection can have such a powerful impact.
So well said. I think we've given our listener a lot to think about today.
I think so too.
We explored some of those surprising findings of that Harvard study,
Yeah, some really cool stuff.
debunked some myths about happiness,
Yeah, busted those wide open.
and hopefully sparked some inspiration for our listeners.
I hope so.
It's been such a great conversation.
It has been, yeah.
And a good reminder that the pursuit of happiness isn't about chasing some far-off goal.
Right.
It's about cultivating those meaningful connections and prioritizing our well-being,
Absolutely.
both physically and socially.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious.